So my name is Amber Barnes. I'm going to be your moderator this evening. I'd like to welcome you all to Walk in the Woods, featuring Friends of Texas Wildlife and Cathie Coudert. This program is produced by the Woodlands Township Environmental Services Department, and tonight's presentation is actually our final program for this year. However, we are planning a very full lineup of online programs and community events for spring 2021. So for the latest on programming and all of our events, or other resources like recycling and solid waste services, mosquito surveillance, sustainable gardening, and water conservation, be sure to follow our weekly blog or our website. I'll put a link to our website as well as our blog in the chat feature so that you can have it for your records. For tonight's presentation, we do ask that for the best experience for everyone that you make sure that your microphone is turned off. When you scroll over the bottom of the screen, you will see that there is a microphone icon and a video or a camera icon. So we ask that you mute yourself to reduce any background noise. And if you're having issues with streaming, you can also turn off your video, and that way you get a better streaming quality. If you have any questions, we do ask that you submit them through the chat feature, which again is going to be located on the bottom bar of your screen. As you scroll over, you'll see a text icon that says chat. Just put your questions into the chat forum, and we'll have a few times throughout the presentation where we'll stop, do a Q&A, as well as we'll capture those questions at the end of the presentation as well. So our guest speaker this evening is Cathie Coudert. Cathie is going to share on the importance of wildlife rehabilitation and the important role of that Friends of Texas Wildlife plays in our community. I'm going to get Cathie's PowerPoint presentation up for her, and then I will turn it over to you, Cathie.
Good evening.
All right. So we'll get this on here so I can share the screen. Cathie, do you see your PowerPoint?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful. All right, it's all you.
All right, great. Thank you. Welcome this evening. I'm so glad to be here with you. Thank you, Amber, for inviting Friends of Texas Wildlife to the Walk in the Woods. Things are a little bit different, so we're having to do this virtually instead of in person. I am a volunteer with Friends of Texas Wildlife and coming to you from my guest bedroom. Let me tell you a little bit about Friends of Texas Wildlife. Next slide. So Friends of Texas Wildlife is a nonprofit organization. We do not receive any state, federal, or local money. We rely completely on donations from the community. All of the donations are tax deductible. Friends of Texas Wildlife started back in 1993. We are all volunteers, and we are permitted through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. Our intake center is located in Magnolia, towards the back end of the Woodlands, near the Honey Egypt area. The intake center is basically a house that has been converted to office spaces, an incubator room, a vet room. We have about 2.5 acres. And on that acreage, we have many different flight enclosures for the different animals that we have. We also have our education center located there. Volunteers are the backbone of Friends of Texas Wildlife, and they perform many different tasks. They help with animals that are coming into the center, doing a triage. They feed some of the patients and the educational animals that we have on site, answering phones, inputting data, rehabbing animals in their homes. fundraising, which is always very important, educational programs, maintaining our grounds and our flower gardens, and transportation. We work with a vet and in Conroe, and we have a transportation group that picks up animals from the vet and brings them to the intake center daily. We rehabilitate thousands of injured, orphaned, and displaced native Texas wildlife every year. So we don't do domestic animals. We don't do ranch type animals, only native Texas animals. We do not care for invasive species. We average about 3,000 to 4,000 animals a year. One of the animals that we take in are fawns. Fawns are born from about Mother's Day until about the 4th of July. When fawns are born, they do not have a scent. So the mother puts them in a safe, secure spot, and then she goes off to feed for the day. That's why those fawns have those spots to help them camouflage in the brush where mom has left them. Then at dusk, mom will come back and feed. We get many calls every spring from concerned citizens that they have found a fawn in their yard and they're worried that they don't see mom and they don't want the baby to starve to death. And our answer is, put the baby back. Mom will be back for it at dusk. When the fawn is about 2 to 3 weeks old, it is strong enough to start following mom. Okay. So again, babies don't have a scent for the first 2 weeks of their life. Mom leaves them in a safe spot so she can go forward, forage. She returns at dusk. And we get well over 100 phone calls every season. And through our education programs and just talking to community members on the phone, we are able to help people understand that the fawns are best left alone. In 2018, we took in 67 fawns. But this past spring, we only took in 54, and that shows that our education is working. Okay. Raccoons. We are at the release time for our baby raccoons that came in this spring. When raccoons are born, they're about the size of a little newborn kitten. Normally, these are found either in a tree that has been cut down, or sometimes they are found in the attic. If the mom cannot be located, if they cannot be reunited with mom, then they are rehabilitated with a permitted rehabber for about 6 to 7 months. It's a very long process. They are fed a very special formula, and as they grow, they are introduced to solid foods. As they are nearing their release time, they are taught how to forage for wild food, such as putting fish in their water bowls or crawdads in their enclosure, so they learn how to hunt. Okay. Next slide. If you find raccoons in your attic, there's a 3-pronged approach to encourage mom to move her babies. Leave the light on in your attic, put a radio up in the attic, and tune it to a talk radio station because they don't like the sound of the human voice. And smell. Put a smelly old dirty dog blanket up in there, or tennis balls that have been soaked in fox or coyote urine. And those are things that you can buy at a sporting goods store. The fox or coyote urine is over in the hunting section. You squirt that on a tennis ball, throw some of the tennis balls up in the attic, and those are predators to raccoons. So it's going to encourage mom to leave. If she doesn't get the hint after 2 or 3 days, then there's only a couple of wildlife control companies that we recommend. Next slide. We have 3 types or 3 species of squirrels in Montgomery County. We have gray squirrels, which are the ones that you probably see the most often. They have the white stomach. The fox squirrel has the orange belly, and the flying squirrels, which most people have not seen. The flying squirrels are small little mammals that are about the size of a hamster, and they have a membrane that stretches from wrist to ankle, and they glide from treetop to treetop. They can go about 150 yards. And since they are nocturnal and they live in the very tops of the trees, many people have not seen them. But if you go out at night and you hear soft little chattering, that might be a colony of flying squirrels, because most birds are asleep at night. So this little chattering, this little peeping might be a colony of flying squirrels. They do live in groups of about 8 to 30 animals in one colony, and they share food, unlike the gray squirrel and the fox squirrel, which tend to bury their own food in the yard. The flying squirrels store it in a cache, and they share it all winter long. Next slide. If you find a baby squirrel, the best thing to do is try to reunite it with mom. Place the baby in a box at the base of a tree and give mom a couple of hours to come back and relocate the baby into the nest. If she doesn't come back, then take the baby inside, put it inside a baby box, and keep it nice and warm until you can get it to a rehabber. Don't give the baby squirrel any food, formula, or water, as they require very specialized diet and feeding technique. You can put the baby squirrel in a baby box. A baby box is simply a shoebox or some other small cardboard box. Place a fleece square or an old t-shirt in the bottom of the box, and keep the baby warm with a rice sock. Find an old sock that has lost its mate. Put about a cup of uncooked white rice in the toe of the sock and tie it off at the top. This can then be put in the microwave for about 20 seconds, and that will keep the baby animal warm. Or you can place the box on a heating pad that has been set on low. All right, we're going to pause the slides for just a moment, and I'm going to bring out one of our educational ambassadors. So if you'll give me just a moment, I'll bring out one of our guests. Step up. Step up. This is Fred. He is a red-tailed hawk. He is an educational ambassador for Friends of Texas Wildlife. Fred stays with us as he is non-releasable. When he was a juvenile, he was hit by a car, and he has injuries that keep him from being released out into the wild. I'm going to turn him around a bit so you can see how he gets his name, red-tailed hawk. Look at those gorgeous red tail feathers. They do not get the red feathers until they're a couple of years old. Now, Fred can fly, as he's trying to show you. Fred can fly, but he is vision impaired, so he would not be a successful hunter out in the wild. You can see that he has some anklets on and jesses and a leash, and he is trained to sit on the glove. Although today he's being a little antsy. He's doing a dance here. We have had Fred for about 7 years now, I think, and hawks can live until they're about 20. So Fred will have a nice long lifetime with Friends of Texas Wildlife. He is fed mice. He gets 2 extra large mice every day. And hawks shred their prey. So he has that hooked beak that he uses to shred his prey with. He holds his prey down with the long talons. Let me see if I can get you to see those long talons that he has. He's still wanting to do a dance for you. Turn around, Fred. There we go. Oh, he's being silly. This is Fred's bedtime, so he's not quite sure why he's been forced to wake up. He is, we believe he's a male due to his size. In birds of prey, the females are usually 25% larger than the males. Fred, pay attention. Pay attention, Fred. He's being a little antsy. Yes, I know. Hawks have very good vision and hearing that helps them find their prey. Red-tailed hawks in the wild would be eating small mammals, rodents like mice and voles. They'll eat snakes and lizards. They'll even get smaller birds. They are close to the top of the food chain in the bird family. They don't have a lot of predators. Their main predators are going to be raccoons that will steal eggs out of the nest. And unfortunately, we have a lot of hawks that come into us that have been hit by vehicles. What happens is a hawk is looking for his prey, he's chasing it, and he's focusing on that prey and not really paying attention to the car that's coming. And the hawk is flying so fast and the car is flying so fast that they don't see each other in time, and we end up with a collision. Sometimes they get something like a concussion and just can rest and recuperate with us for a few days, and then can be released into the wild. But through testing, we found that Fred's vision was greatly impaired. So he is an educational ambassador for us. So I think someone had a question about his ears. They are small little discs on the side of his head, covered with feathers. He's being very antsy.
Cathie, there was one more question in the chat. Someone was asking if you could repeat the fact about the difference between female hawks and male hawks.
Yes. Female hawks are typically 25% larger than the males. You can hear Fred squawking. Fred is a silly bird. He quacks like a duck, and we're not quite sure why. But when you hear a bird screeching in movies, for example, if they show an eagle flying and the eagle is making a screeching sound, that's not an eagle. That's a hawk that they have recorded for the movie. Eagles really don't make much of a sound. Just a moment. Fred's decided he's a little antsy. There we go, Fred. My goodness. What's going on today? What's going on this evening? Sure, being antsy. Okay. Any other questions about Fred?
I think that's all of our questions for now, Cathie.
Okay, so I'm going to let Fred have a break, and then we'll look at some more of the PowerPoint. It's a silly boy. It's a silly boy. Okay, so we talked about the baby box to keep a little animal warm that you have found until you can get it to a rehabber. Opossums. Opossums are the only marsupial in North America, and the correct way to say it is opossum. Here in Texas, we have the Virginia opossum. I know we tend to shorten it and just say possum, but that animal is actually in Australia. Opossums are very unique in that they have an opposable thumb. The opposable thumb helps them hold on to the branches as they climb through the trees. They also use it to hold on to their food, and they'll grab some of their prey and leaves that they're using to make a nest. Opossums have a prehensile tail, which helps them hold on to the branches. They will even use that prehensile tail to grab a wad of leaves that they want to drag back to their den or their nest. They can't really hang upside down by it, especially an adult. That tail's mainly used for balance. Okay. So since opossums are marsupials, the mother carries the young in a pouch. When they're born, they're only about the size of a bumblebee. Then they climb into the pouch and attach themselves to a nipple. And mom can have up to 13 joeys in her pouch. They latch onto that nipple and they don't even have to suck. The milk just kind of dribbles into their stomach. They are in the pouch for about 2 months. After that time, they climb onto mom's back and hold on tight, and they are on mom's back for another 2 months. So as she's walking through the forest, finding food and water and shelter and staying away from predators, this is their training time or their learning time. It's like a little miniature school bus. After 2 months on the back, mom either shakes them off or she climbs under a tree branch and scrapes them off, and they are on their own. Opossums have a fairly short lifespan. They only live for about 2 to 3 years. They are very beneficial animals to have in our environment. They eat snakes and they are immune to the venom. They love to eat ticks, and that helps to keep ticks out of your yard and off of your pets. They do not carry very many diseases. They don't carry distemper or rabies. They are known for being very clean animals. They clean themselves like a cat. They only have a couple of defenses. They will open their mouth and hiss and show off their 50 teeth to try to scare away a predator. If that doesn't work, then they play possum. It's basically a feint. Most predators do not want a dead animal. They want to hunt for a live animal. So if a possum plays dead, then hopefully the predator will move along. Okay. So if you find an animal that needs assistance, whether it's a bird or a mammal, there are some things to do to help you capture that animal and take it to a rehabilitator. So you need to protect yourself first. Wear gloves, and some nice leather gardening gloves are great for this. Have a partner. Make sure you're watching any traffic if you're near a roadway, and have your cell phone handy. Throw a towel or a blanket over the animal, and then grab the whole kit and caboodle and put it in either a cardboard box or a pet carrier. Then keep the animal in a dark and quiet spot until you can get it to a rehabber. It's very important that you do not give the animal any food, water, or formula unless you have been instructed to do so by a rehabber. Most of our rehab patients require a very special diet and a very special feeding technique. Giving animals the wrong food or formula can cause digestive issues, and if they are fed incorrectly, this could lead to aspirational pneumonia. So once you have the animal, just put it in a nice quiet spot until you can bring it to Friends of Texas Wildlife. Birds of prey, or raptors, are birds that hunt, such as hawks and owls and eagles. As I mentioned earlier, we have many birds that come to us that have been hit by a car. Sometimes they have leg or wing issues, or they have a concussion. After they have recuperated, then they are released back into the same area that they came from, because raptors are territorial and they also mate for life. So we want to put that bird back in its home where it can hopefully find its mate. Also, many times we get the chicks in when a tree has been cut down. If at all possible, wait until after baby season is over before you have trees removed. We have 4 types of owls in Montgomery County. We have the eastern screech owl, which is a small little owl that's only about 6 inches tall. Many times when people call and say that they have found a baby owl, more than likely it is a little screech owl. The screech owls come in 2 color phases or morphs. We have the red morph and the gray morph. And having 2 different colorations is pretty unique to the eastern screech owls. We also have the beautiful barn owls. We don't see these very often because they live in areas that are very remote. They have the beautiful white heart-shaped face, and they are typically found in abandoned barns, and often deer hunters will find them in their stands. The barred owl is named for its feather patterning on its chest. It looks like little jail bars. And the largest owl that we have in our area is the great horned owl. And you can see those feather tufts on top of the great horned owl's head and its yellow eyes. The faces of the owls actually help them to hear. The sound comes in to their flat face, and that feather pattern, the disc-shaped feather pattern, helps to channel that sound back into their ears. Their ears are asymmetrical, meaning that one ear is slightly higher than the other and a little bit farther back. That way they get kind of surround sound. Many times people think that owls can turn their heads all the way around. Not quite. They can turn their head 270 degrees. They can do that because they have 14 vertebrae in their neck, whereas we only have 7. Owls need to turn their heads in order to see due to the shape of their eyes and their skull. If you'll look at that diagram of the owl skull, you can see that the eye sockets are pretty fixed and almost out in a little tubular shape. The owl's eyes are so large in their skull that they cannot turn them. So they must turn their head in order to see everything around them. So before we move on, I have an owl to show you. If you'll give me just a moment, I'll go get Luna. Come on, step up. Step up. This is Luna. She is a barred owl. She is an educational ambassador for Friends of Texas Wildlife. And she is a non-releasable animal. She had also been hit by a car, and due to her injuries, she would not be a successful hunter. Her vision is impaired and one of her wings is a little impaired. So she stays with us, and she is fed mice every day. And so she gets room service. Owls have some very special adaptations to help them be successful hunters. They have fringes on the edges of their wings that help break up the wind, that helps them fly silently. They also have a lot of downy feathers here on their chest. They also have lots of feathers on their legs. Most birds, like robins or cardinals, do not have feathering on their legs, but the feathers on Luna's legs will help her fly silently. You can see her large, dark eyes and the feather pattern on her head, which helps to channel that sound. Let me see if I can get her to show you how she turns her head around. She's pretty intent on watching me. Let me see if I can get her to turn. There, you can see she's looking over her back. She has a pretty large wingspan. Let me see if she'll let me. There she goes. See if I can show you her wings. There we go. So you can see what a large wingspan she has. Owls do not have the same type of beak that hawks do. Let me see if I can get her to show you her beak. She does not have the long curved beak that hawks do. Her beak is much shorter because she doesn't need to rip her food apart. Owls swallow their prey whole. The parts that they don't need are regurgitated in an owl pellet. So the food goes down into the digestive system. The stomach gets out the meat that it needs, and then regurgitates the bones and the fur or the feathers that it does not want into an owl pellet. And one of the very fun things that we do with kids is to dissect an owl pellet. And you can pick apart an owl pellet and find all the little bones of the animal that the owl ate and put it back together again, like a archaeologist puts dinosaur bones back together. So Luna is about 6 years old now, I think. And owls live 20 to 25 years. And since she's in captivity and doesn't have to worry about her food or predators, she might live past that. Hi, Luna. You gonna be a good girl? Hmm? You a good girl?
Cathie, someone asked in the chat, just to confirm, owls have stomachs, not gizzards. Are you able to share with us about birds with gizzards and how owls' digestive system is different?
Yes, they the hawks have a crop, and the owls. Hi, baby. Are you gonna be all right? Yeah, she's giving me a dirty look here. Yes, she has a gizzard just like the hawks do, like most birds. It's not a true stomach like mammals have. And she has, I know, that clacking that she just did tells me that she was annoyed with me because I was messing with her wings. Barred owls have a different hooting sound. It's not the deep-throated hoo 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 sound. Theirs is, it sounds like they're saying, "Who cooks for you?" And at night, you can hear them calling back and forth to each other. And she'll make a who cooks for you sound, whereas the great horned owls have that deep hoo sound. And this little eastern screech owls sound like a tiny little horse whinnying. It's a more of a scream sound. It's very scary if you're out camping at night and you hear a little screech owl. She has the long talons that she would grab her prey with. Can you pick up your feet? Can you pick up your feet? So you can see her anklets and her jessies. She can fly a bit, but she would not be a successful hunter due to her permanent injuries. Her feathers are very soft, and she does not weigh very much at all. Fred weighs about 2 pounds, and Luna weighs just a little bit under that. Their bones are hollow, as in most birds, to help with flight, and they have many downy feathers, which are very lightweight. And so they don't weigh very much at all.
Cathie, we have another question. Could you answer, are there hoots so they can communicate with other owls at night?
Yes. Yes, they communicate with each other at night. They'll communicate with other owls or with their mate. Okay. Any other questions about Luna before I put her back? Let me see if I can get her to move her head again. Whoop.
I don't see any other questions about Luna, but we did have one earlier that I missed about Fred.
Okay.
Tell us what Fred's wingspan is.
Oh, it's about 3.5 feet. 3.5 to 4 feet. Here's, let me see if I can show you. Here's Luna's wingspan. And Fred's would be just a little bit smaller than hers. Here we go. You all right? She's just very intent. There she is. There's a face.
Cathie, you had mentioned waiting until the end of chick season so that tree work can be done safely. About what time of year is that?
In the winter. Most of the mating season for owls is in December, January. Then it takes 30 days for the eggs to hatch. And then after a couple of months, they'll become branchers, which means they'll start to fledge. And the parents will still continue to feed them for several months. But unfortunately, as soon as the owls are finished fledgling, then we've got our baby squirrels and baby birds that are occupying those trees. So if you have to have a tree removed, have your arborist or your crew that's going to be trimming your trees, just do a little quick check to see if we have any residents. Okay, so I'm going to put Luna back in her spot. Okay, and we can go back to the PowerPoint. Friends of Texas Wildlife is one of just about 4 facilities in the entire state of Texas that are permitted through the federal government to rehabilitate bald eagles. We get most of our bald eagles during the winter, and this is after hunting season. Lead poisoning is the most common issue that brings the eagles into us. If a hunter does not retrieve what he has shot, or if he has gutted the animal and leaves the leavings, the guts there, an eagle can come by and either eat the animal or eat the carcass or the innards where the bullet or shots or ammunition is, and those are made out of lead. Lead is toxic, and now that eagle has ingested lead. They can also get lead from getting a fish who has taken a fisherman's hook, line, and sinker. The sinkers are made out of lead. The lead causes the eagle's system to start to shut down. They are not able to eat. They are grounded. They begin to starve to death. And this is when people find eagles and bring them to us. We work very closely with a vet, and we use medication to help bring that lead out of the eagle's system and out of its bones. It's a very long process. Many times the eagles have to be tube fed in the beginning because they are so weak, and then we have to slowly increase their food. And the reason that we have our eagle permits from the federal government is that we have an eagle flight enclosure that you'll see on the next slide. So that's our eagle flight enclosure. When an eagle can fly from end to end and catch live prey, then we know that it's able to go back out into the wild. We also make sure that we release the eagles back into the same area that they came from because they are territorial and monogamous. So we want them to find their mate again. We have several nesting pairs in this area. There are 2 or 3 nesting pairs up at Lake Conroe. There's a pair in Tomball, and there's a couple of pairs in the woodlands as well. We rehabilitate all birds, both native and migratory birds. Right now, we're having some migratory birds come in, such as Cooper hawks, that just need a little extra boost to get them on their way. Sometimes birds will hit a window or be hit by a car, and we work very closely with our vet and our trained rehabbers to help those birds on their way. If you find a little baby bird in the spring, there are several things to look at in order to find out what care that bird needs. If it has little or no downy feathers, that's a nestling, and we need to try and get it back into the nest. It's an old wives' tale that if you touch a bird, the mom won't care for it anymore. Birds don't have a great sense of smell. That's not how they find their food. So you can pick the baby bird up and put it back in the nest. Fledglings are birds that are learning how to fly. They are mostly feathered and they have stubby little tail feathers. Fledglings have to hop out of the nest and fall down to the ground in order to learn how to fly. They flutter and hop and flutter and hop, and it takes them about 3 or 4 days to get the hang of flying. In the meantime, the parents will still come down to feed it. So if you see a fledgling on the ground, if it has short little stubby tail feathers, the best thing to do is to leave that fledgling alone. Bring the pets inside and let the parents continue to feed it and raise it. If a bird has hit a window, you can put it in an open box outside, perhaps maybe up on the patio table, or put the box on top of some bushes up off the ground so the ants don't get it, and let the bird recover. Sometimes they just kind of ding themselves silly, and after a rest, they'll be able to take off on their own. If they do not fly away after a couple of hours, then you need to bring it to a rehabber. If a bird has injured a wing, put it in a box and take it to a rehabber, keeping the box in a dark and quiet spot. Again, don't try to give the bird any food, water, seed, or insects. Many birds have a very specialized diet, and if you feed a seed-eating bird worms, they won't be able to digest it properly, and it'll get stuck in their crop. So if you find a bird that needs assistance, the best thing to do is just to keep it quiet until you can get it to a rehabber. Turtles are the only reptile that we rehabilitate. There are other groups that take care of snakes. The two main types of turtles that we have in our area are the red ear sliders, which are water turtles, and the three-toed box turtles, which are land turtles. If you see a turtle on the road, the best thing to do is to make sure that you are safe, that traffic is not going to be an issue, and safely help the turtle across the road in the same direction that it was going. Don't pick up the turtle and go take it to a pond in your neighborhood, because turtles are very territorial. They only have about a 1 mile radius that they call home. If you take a turtle and relocate it someplace else, it will spend its life trying to get back home. The goal of all of our rehabilitated patients is to release them back out into the wild. In Texas, it is illegal to have a wild animal, a native Texas wildlife, as a pet. So no pet raccoons, no pet deer. We release all of our animals into safe locations where there's no hunting allowed, where there's a water source, a food source, and plenty of shelter. So if you find an animal in need, contact Friends of Texas Wildlife by phone or through our help email line, which is ftwl.help@gmail.com. You can also check out our website or our Facebook page for tips on what to do if you find an animal in need of some assistance. You can also look for rehabilitators on the Texas Parks and Wildlife website. There is also an Animal Help Now website and phone app, which will find a rehabber closer to you. It's very important that you don't try to rehabilitate wildlife unless you are a permitted rehabber. In Texas, you have to have a permit to rehabilitate wildlife. Don't feed an animal that you have rescued. Wildlife requires a special diet. And don't move animals to another location. If you trap a raccoon and move it to another location, you have now taken that animal away from its home, its food source, its mate, and possibly its babies. And even though it might be fun and cute to watch animals come up to your back door to feed, it's not good for the animals. Feeding raccoons or possums only encourages unwanted backyard visitors, and it concentrates the animals in one location. And if there happens to be a diseased animal there, it will spread to the rest in that location. Make sure you pick up your dog or your cat food at night. So a couple of things to think about with rabies vector species. In our area, bats and skunks have been known to carry rabies, but a very small percentage. To a very lesser degree are fox, coyote, and bobcats. There has not been a case of rabies in a raccoon in Montgomery County in over 20 years. Animals that stumble or circle like they're intoxicated, or if they seem overly lethargic, if they are dragging their back end, those animals may have distemper, which is a highly contagious and fatal disease. Animals that seem overly friendly and approachable may also have distemper, as that distemper is a neurological disease. If you suspect that an animal is sick, make sure that you call your local animal control agency. So some myths about animal behavior. If you see a raccoon out during the day, that does not mean that it has rabies. More than likely, it is a mother trying to find extra food for those babies that are back in the den. If a bat is down on the ground, that does not mean that it has rabies. The bats in our area cannot take off from the ground. So if they were knocked from their roost during a storm, they cannot fly from the ground. If you find a bat, then you can get a dustpan Make sure you're wearing some leather gloves, and scoop it up and put it on the trunk of a tree and let it grab onto that tree and climb up. Then at dusk, it will be able to swoop down into flight. It will fall into flight. Opossums do not carry rabies, and this is due to their low body temperature. Friends of Texas Wildlife has an education center located on the same property as the intake center. Unfortunately, right now, due to COVID, our education center is closed. We are conducting all of our educational programs via either Zoom or taped video lessons. Hopefully, we will be able to open our center back up in the spring or summer. At our education center, we have a large diorama that we use to teach children about some of the animals that are in our area. We have lots of touchable things, skins, feathers, bones, tracks, many things for the children to touch and feel and learn about wildlife in our area. When our education programs open up again, we will have second Saturday. We have Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that come out to our center to do badge work. We go out to schools and libraries and other community organizations to do programming. We have summer day camp. We host birthday parties, and we also host homeschool groups. So what are the things that you can do to help wildlife in your area? You can volunteer at Friends of Texas Wildlife. You can become a rehabber. Once you become a volunteer with Friends of Texas Wildlife, we can train you to rehab any species that you might be interested in. We operate completely on donations from the community, so any monetary donations that you make are greatly appreciated. We also appreciate donations of supplies. We have a wish list on our website and on our Facebook page. We also always need things like pet food and bird seed, fleece blankets that we use for the little baby boxes to keep the babies warm. If you shop at Kroger, you can connect Friends of Texas Wildlife to your Kroger card. And also Amazon Smile donates a portion to of your purchases to Friends of Texas Wildlife if you choose them as your charity.
That is the last slide, Cathie.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
We did have a few in the chat. Let's see here. We had a few that came in when we were discussing eagles. Someone wanted to know, how old do eagles grow up to be?
Most of the eagles in our area can live anywhere between 15 to about 18 years.
And another question about eagles, do the eagles that are in the woodlands or Montgomery County area, do they stay all year round?
Yes, the mating pairs that we have in our area, most of the pairs here stay year round. There are some eagles that will migrate, but most of the mating pairs that people see in the woodlands stay here year round.
Cathie, that is all the questions that have come into our chat for the evening. There are a lot of wonderful comments. I think we'd all agree that this was a wonderful presentation and very informative and very important topic to always remind everyone of the importance of wildlife and the hard work that your organization is doing. That wraps up our program for the evening.
Okay.
If anyone does have further questions, you can always contact our Environmental Services Department. We are recording this presentation this evening, so we will share that link for those who maybe didn't get to watch the whole thing or would like to forward it to family and friends. And of course, keep in mind Friends of Texas Wildlife this holiday season. If you have the opportunity to help support their wonderful organization, I'm sure Cathie would appreciate it. Cathie, thank you for a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you for having Friends of Texas Wildlife.